Most bettors don't lose because they can't pick games. They lose because they put too much money in the wrong places. Today, I'm going to show you the 5% and 15% bankroll rule, the simplest way to control exposure, stop blowing up slates, and actually sleep at night while you're betting. So if you've ever had one game or one day wreck your mood, this video is going to be for you. This is Grandstand Sports Data, and let's get into the video. Most bettors don't actually have a pick problem like we talked about. They have what's called an exposure problem. An exposure is simply the total amount of your bankroll that is at risk at one time. And there are only really two types that matter here. You have the single game, and then you have how much you have across an entire slate or even a day. Here's how this is going to show up in real life, though. Maybe you're putting too much on one game, and that's going to look like someone with $1,000 bankroll firing like $200 or $300 on one lock because they're just confident in that play. Then one bad bounce later or one late score, and their entire week is shot, right? We've all heard this before. And then putting too much on one slate looks like spreading money across 10 or 12 different games where none of the bets are crazy on their own, but altogether they've got $300 or $400 in play on one single day. And then when that slate goes sideways, the damage ends up becoming real. And putting too much money in circulation in general is when someone's betting every day across multiple sports, adding in live bets. Maybe they're putting in props, and then they're just doing almost everything, right? And then they're asking themselves, well, how is my bankroll so empty when I have one bad day? Well, the bottom line is simple here. If one slate can ruin your night, your exposure is totally wrong. And if this already sounds familiar, I need you guys to hit that like button. This is going to tell me that this kind of betting education is actually useful and we can continue to put out more videos like this. So let's get to the rule and why you've come here, right? This video is going to be built on the first thing, which is you never want to have more than 5% of your bankroll on one single game, or I would even say event. You just don't want that. Next, you're never going to want more than 15% of your bankroll out on one slate or even one day. And this is going to help you from, just being overexposed. There's going to be no exceptions here, right? No exceptions to any of this, no matter how good the bet feels. Any game can lose and any slate can go bad for reasons that you can't control. And this rule isn't about playing scared, it's about making sure one result doesn't mess up your week, right? So whether you win or you lose, the rule will always stay the same because feeling confident doesn't change the risk. So if you want more rules like this, I need you guys to consider subscribing to Grandstand Sports Data because we will be pumping out more videos that are going to help you with your sports betting education. All right, so let's get into why this rule even exists. And this rule exists because randomness is inevitable in betting. No matter how good your analysis is, things you can't control are always going to happen. And that's why this rule is first and foremost about preventing total ruin. It's going to keep one bad game or even one bad day from wiping out your entire bankroll. And over time, it's going to protect your bankroll by limiting how much damage any stretch of losses can do to it. And it's also going to encourage responsible betting instead of emotional betting. That's probably one of the most important things that you can take from this. It's also going to help mitigate chasing losses because when your exposure is capped, you're not tempted to press or even double up just to get back to even. So you always have those guardrails around you. But the real shift is going to be mental. You move from thinking I need this bet to win to understanding that this is just one of many bets. Remember, sports betting is about placing very small edges over and over and over again. One bet should not crush you. And this is the hard truth, right? The market doesn't really reward excitement or confidence. It's going to reward discipline. So this rule turns losses into something that you planned for, not something that knocks you off of course. That is going to be the most important takeaway that you can get from this. So now let's jump to an example because we're going to use some real numbers here. And nothing crazy, no heavy duty math. We're just giving you strict $1,000 bankroll here. The most that you should ever have on one bet is going to be $50 because that's 5% of 1,000, 50, right? And the most that you should ever have out on an entire slate is going to be that 15%, and 15% of 1,000 is 150. So from there, how much you bet on each individual play, whether it's 1%, 3%, maybe even 5%, is going to depend on the bet sizing strategy that you use. Maybe you're a fixed unit better, maybe a percentage better, or even something more advanced like the Kelly criterion. That sizing choice is going to be up to you, but the exposure limits that you see here will always remain the same. I don't care what approach you use, you will never go over the 5%. Now, if you're more of a sniper better and only take a few strong plays, you might bet around 3% per play and end up with about 5 bets on the slate. Or the most that you could wind up with is 5 plays. Now, if you're a volume better, it's a little bit different, right? You're usually closer to the 1% per play because you're going to have more volume, which is giving you about 15 plays in the day. Now, the real question here is what happens when a volume bettor has more than 15 plays they want to make? And that's exactly what we're going to handle next. Because the answer is never to bet more money, it's to size smarter. And the key takeaway here is going to be simple. You don't bet everything that you like, you bet the best of what you like. And if you want more bankroll bet sizing videos like this, drop bankroll down in the comments or even just give your best bankroll strategy that you've used in your history. All right, so remember, we wanted to come back to this. If you were a volume better, what if you had more than 15 plays? So some bettors do have a lot of plays, and they have to play small edges. That's normal, especially on big slates. Think of something like a college basketball Saturday, where there are like 70 games on the board, and your model might flag 20, 30, or even more plays than that. That doesn't mean that you take on more risk. More bets does not mean more exposure. Please remember that. And the daily limit still applies no matter how many plays you have. So the way that you handle volume is by spreading the same risk across smaller bets. What does that mean? So if you have 15 bets, you're usually around that 1% per play, right? Now, what if you like 20 bets? If you have 20 bets, that drops closer to 3/4%. And if you're up around 30 bets, you're going to be closer to that 0.5%, which is like $5 now. So all you're doing really is the total exposure never changes. You're still up around that $150 mark, but only how it's distributed gets changed, right? That's the key idea here. The volume changes distribution, not the risk. So as you can see from here, if you have 15 bets, and you stay at those 1% per play, each bet will be $10. For 20, each bet will be $7.50. If you have 30 bets, each bet will be $5. So it won't be a full 1 unit or a 1% play. It'll be only a half. But that gives you the opportunity to have more volume while keeping the total number the same at 150. So I hope that makes sense. Now, one more thing before we move on. And a lot of people miss this, right? Volume betting requires a bankroll floor. So if your bankroll is too small, the math stops working for you. And what do we mean by this? Like 1% of $100 is a dollar. And you can't size properly at that level, or you can't do fractional sizing at that level, right? The sports books the minimum that they can take is $1. So that's why volume bettors shouldn't operate with less than about $500 bankroll. That's what I would suggest to you. So if your bankroll ever drops under that, you don't keep firing volume. You're gonna need to switch to more of the sniping approach until you build up more of a bankroll. All right, so let's get into the final takeaway. And the final takeaway is that this rule is the foundation of everything that you do as a bettor, right? It's not necessarily flexible. It's not something that you adjust based on how good you feel about a slate or even just one bet. It doesn't change based on confidence, recent wins, or how strong the edge looks. This is how professionals protect their bankroll. And then it's how they stay in the game long enough for their edge to actually matter. The goal isn't to squeeze every dollar out of today or have the biggest day possible. It's to make sure that you're still betting tomorrow, next week, and even next month. You don't manage your bankroll to maximize today, you manage it to survive every day. If this video helped you think differently about bankroll management, I need you to hit that like button. It's going to help the channel more than you can ever imagine. I want you guys also to subscribe if you want more structured betting education built around discipline and not necessarily hype. And if you want more tools that actually help you apply this scenario, drop Bankroll down in the comments and we will get going on those as soon as possible. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.